So I'm going to be covering my dad's book, GMOs, The Toxic Truth. I'll do a series of videos on this. And it's actually going to be educational for myself as well. Just thinking about what we typically eat on a day-to-day basis, like whether it's cereal, toast, or whatever it is packaged, bread, sauce, dressing, cooking oil, anything seasoned, processed ingredients, right? So did anybody ask for our permission to put bacterial genes or viral DNA or tumor-causing plant pathogens in those foods? Okay, so because that's what the GMO foods really contain. And so Dr. Ingram, my father, he spent his whole career investigating the food supply and trying to understand why people are suffering from what they're suffering from, right? So he documented this very thoroughly, and why the companies responsible for this that are making us sick. They fought so hard to make sure that we don't learn about it, and the truth is not uncovered, right? Okay, so I'm not a doctor, but I'm just my father, Dr. Ingram. He was a leading nutritional doctor, and he passed away approximately 3 years ago. And I'm just here he wrote over 40 books on wellness. I'm here to propagate that knowledge. So we will continue with this. Okay, so one of the most important things to understand about GMOs before we go further, this is not crossbreeding. Okay, so it's not the same as farmers who have been selectively growing crops for centuries. This process takes related plants, species, and allows them to reproduce naturally, the crossbreeding. Genetic modification is categorically different. So that's where genetic engineers, what they do is they take a gene from one organism, a bacterium, virus, or even a cold water fish, and force it into the DNA of a completely unrelated plant. And so fish genes, they end up going into tomatoes. Bacterial genes, they go into corn, and viral promoters into soybeans. And then the reason they have to force it, this doesn't really happen naturally. So nature already has its own built-in defenses against this kind of cross-contamination. Bacteria have restriction enzymes specifically designed to cut out and destroy foreign DNA that tries to invade them. And the body has immune systems. Nature at every level is already saying no to this. So that's what genetic engineering tries to override. So they use what Dr. Ingram's research describes as infective agents like actual bacteria, actual viruses, as delivery mechanism to carry out new gene into the target plant cell. And so that the bacteria and viruses they use to do this are listed in scientific literature as infective. And that word is the technical documentation of the industry itself. So once the foreign gene gets inside the plant cell, it inserts itself into the DNA. And then every time the plant reproduces, every time that cell divides, that foreign genetic material replicates with it. So that plant then becomes food. And the corn, the soy, canola, the beet sugar that carry that genetic material into your body. So my father wrote about this in his research. Through the consumption of GMOs, man-made, corrupted microbial genes fully infect the human body with never before existing DNA sequences. And so let's just think about what that means, that there are DNA sequences in the genetically modified food supply that did not exist in nature before the 1990s. And the majority of Americans are consuming them every day in every single meal without knowing it. Okay, so then how are these GMOs actually made? Okay, so there are several techniques that they use to force foreign genes into plant cells. One is bacterial infection, the plant pathogen, which in nature causes tumor-like galls on plants, is used as a delivery vehicle. So the desired gene is inserted into a carrier element called a plasmid and dropped into a solution with the bacteria. And then the bacteria infect the target plant cells and deliver the plasmid and the new gene directly into the plant's DNA. So here's where it gets serious. There was a study published in the Proceedings of National, Academy of Sciences that found that agrobacterium can do the same thing to human cells. The investigators found that the bacteria attach to human tissue and genetically transform it, inserting plant tumor causing DNA into our DNA. The second technique is what the industry calls a gene gun. The desired DNA is coated onto microscopic particles of gold or tungsten, and those particles are then blasted using compressed gas into the target plant cells haphazardly. So that's the word that Dr. Ingram used, haphazardly, because the precision of where the foreign gene lands in the existing DNA structure is essentially uncontrolled. And then the third technique he used is electric shock, and so that's where target cells are immersed in a solution with the foreign DNA, and there's an intense electrical current that is passed through. The shock tears small holes in the cell walls. The foreign DNA enters through those holes, and the damaged cells are then placed in another solution to supposedly repair the cell walls to lock the donor DNA inside. So damaged cells blasted with heavy metals, forced open by electric shock, infected by bacteria that cause tumors in plants. So that's what we're dealing with. So this is the production process of that corn in the tortilla chip. And then there's another layer that Dr. Ingram documented. A lot of people don't talk about. So many of these foreign genes won't function inside the new plant without what researchers call a promoter. So it's a kind of molecular ignition switch. These promoters are often derived from viruses. Specifically, one of the most commonly used is the CAMV35S promoter, derived from the cauliflower mosaic virus. The entire function is to force the inserted gene to express continuously outside the host organism normal regulatory systems. In other words, so you have the viral gene, it's acting as a trigger, forcing an animal or bacterial gene to operate inside a corn or soy plant, producing proteins and enzymes that have never existed in that species before. So researchers have called this, without exaggeration, inherently unstable. So the resulting proteins and enzymes produced are, in the words of my father, substances that have never been in the host species before. So that's what's happening. So who really profits and who gets silenced in this situation? So why go through all of this? Why create something so complicated, this invasive? And obviously, like a lot of things that are going wrong in this world, is really greed. To scale, it's to scale farming, and that's all about. And so when you genetically modify a seed, and then then there's the patenting. You can patent it. A natural seed, the kind farmers have saved and replanted for thousands of years, cannot be owned. Okay, a modified seed can. And a patented seed means every farmer who plants it has to pay the company that owns the patent every year for every acre. Okay, so that's part of it, but there's a larger piece. The same companies that produce the GMO seeds, they also produce the herbicides. Those crops are designed to tolerate. So it's their own little ecosystem of corruption. And so the crops are engineered specifically to survive being sprayed with chemicals that would kill any ordinary plant. So the Roundup tolerant crops, Roundup tolerant soy, Roundup tolerant corn, the crop survives, the weeds die, and then the company sells both the seeds and the herbicide. It's a closed loop, a system designed to maximize the chemical sales as well. And Dr. Ingram documented that since the introduction of GMO crops in the U.S., the total herbicide and pesticide use has increased by some 300 million pounds. And then the claim that GMOs reduce chemical use in agriculture is the opposite of what actually happened. So now, did the public want this? The people that are consuming this food? So that's what really should make each one of us angry. And so as early as the 1990s, before many of us even heard of the word GMO, surveys were already out saying that 75% of Americans felt that GMO foods should be labeled. And later surveys, up to 90%. 90% Americans want to know what's in their food and want it on the label. If it's GMO, then just an indication that it's GMO. So then those companies spent hundreds of millions of dollars to make sure that didn't happen. There's the ballot initiative called Proposition 37, the right to know in California, what required GMO labeling on food. But Monsanto, Dow, Cargill, DuPont, Bayer, BASF, and a coalition of food companies, including Kellogg's, Campbell's Soup, Del Monte, spent $45 million to defeat it. Some of those companies that funded the anti-labeling effort were companies that marketed themselves as health food brands. So the reason is simple. So my father wrote it plainly that if the food labeled contains gene-altered material, bacterial genes, viral genes, and gene promoters, cancer-inducing gene fragments, nobody's going to buy it. And that's not an opinion. That's what happened with the Flavor Saver tomato. Okay, so the Flavor Saver tomato in 1994. The Flavor Saver was the first food ever labeled genetically engineered in the U.S., and it was created by inserting flounder genes from a cold water fish into a tomato. The idea was to make it frost resistant and extend the shelf life. So when people found out what it was, they refused to buy it. The tomato didn't perform as promised. It actually spoiled faster, not slower. It grew mold readily, and it was pulled from the market. So the lesson the industry took was that this is a bad idea. Don't label it. So they didn't. And you've been eating it ever since. So what do we do about this? So here's this is not a hopeless situation. There's countries that are fighting back and largely free of this. So Japan banned it, the UK rejected, Germany, the entire European Union requires mandatory labeling of GMO-containing foods and beverages. France, the Netherlands, Hungary, Poland, Russia, most of Africa. My father documented that the health trajectories of the companies that, or the countries, I should say, that rejected the GMO crops diverge noticeably from countries that adopted them. So North Americans are the primary test population, this phrase, were the ultimate guinea pigs. So, but here's what he also documented. So when Americans are informed, they also reject these. So the Flavor Saver, the new leaf tomato, which Monsanto introduced with great fanfare, farmers grew it, but consumers rejected it. The potato processors followed the consumers and dropped it. Bayer's GMO rice contaminated storage bins in Arkansas and Missouri and reached Japan's import supply and triggered international lawsuits because Japan and the European Union suspended the U.S. rice imports over it. So when people know, they act. The problem has never been that Americans are apathetic. The problem, as my father wrote, is really awareness. And most Americans generally don't know which foods contain these modifications because they're not indicated. So they don't know as much. Okay, and then now, what are the big GMO crops that we should be aware of, right, in the U.S. food supply? Okay, corn. So more than 90% of corn grown in the U.S. is genetically modified. Corn is in almost every processed food. Corn syrup, cornstarch, maltodextrin, dextrose, citric acid, ascorbic acid, modified cornstarch. If you eat any packaged food and you haven't specifically verified it's non-GMO, there's almost certainly some GMO corn in it. So then you have soy. 93% of soybeans grown in the U.S. are GMO. Soy hides under at least 15 ingredient names. Soy oil, soy lecithin, textured vegetable protein, hydrolyzed vegetable protein, modified cornstarch, MSG, and what is labeled as natural flavors often contains soy derivatives. Canola, the majority of commercial canola is Roundup tolerant, GMO, and canola oil is in almost every commercial salad dressing, baking product, and cooking spray on the market. Beet sugar as well. If a label says sugar, without specifying cane sugar, it's mostly from genetically modified sugar beets. Cottonseed oil is also used in commercial fried foods. Snack oils, restaurant cooking oils. So if you're eating any processed packaged restaurant prepared food that doesn't contain certified non-GMO or USDA organic label, then you're probably consuming these in many of your meals. It's not alarmism or anything. It's just arithmetic. And so the tools to protect yourself, they're straightforward. And many of us are implementing this. Look for the non-GMO verification or the USDA organic. And organic certification prohibits GMO ingredients. If a label says vegetable oil, corn sweetener, modified cornstarch, natural flavors, then treat it as GMO by default. And it takes some effort, but he wrote that it can't really be done lazily or haphazardly. It's worth the effort. Millions of people have already made this choice. And so just to recap, so genetic modification is not cross breeding. It's using infective bacteria, viral gene promoters, and techniques like gene guns, electrical shock to force foreign DNA from fish, bacteria, and viruses into the cells of plants and then into the food supply. The 5 GMO crops known, top 5, corn, soy, canola, beet sugar, and cottonseed. Okay. So we know that the substantially all of us reject this, but on the other hand, we have companies spending, in the case of California alone, $45 million to prevent GMO labeling, and so that's what we're kind of up against here. So we have so many countries that fought back against this. So Dr. Ingram, he spent years documenting this, the science, the corporate history, the regulatory failures, not to frighten but inform, because it's always better for us. It's really up to us to make these choices, and we're not able to rely on the authorities or to look out for our best interests, even though that's what their job is, really, to hold these companies accountable. Okay, so then we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next video. We're gonna look at Roundup, actually specifically, we're gonna look at herbicides, and what published research says it does to the human body, and how the company responded, and research that published some inconvenient findings for them. So yeah, that's pretty much all that we have to cover for today. If you see people in your food, if you see people in your life consuming this type of food, feel free to share this with them. Maybe it would help them. And wish you the best health and wellness. And that's it for now.